Hello everyone, welcome to this video on the concept of residential status of an individual. This video aims to provide an overview of the key concepts related to the residential status of individuals under the Income Tax Act. The Income Tax Act 1961, Section 6 defined the term residential status for the purpose of establishing whether a taxpayer resided in India in a given financial year or not. It is very different from the citizenship granted to the individual. The residential status is totally different from the citizenship. A person of an Indian origin is one, either of his parents or any of his grandparents was born in undivided India. But the residential status of an individual generally depends on his physical presence, that is, the number of days stayed in India in a particular year, and not on his nationality. So in this video, we will explore the different categories of residential status and the criteria used to determine the individual's residential status for tax purpose. The Income Tax Act categorizes individuals into three main residential status groups, that is resident, non-resident, third one is not ordinarily resident. Not ordinarily resident is nothing but he is a resident but not ordinarily resident. To determine the residential status of individual, there are some criteria. There are two conditions are there, that is basic condition and additional condition. If an individual satisfies the basic condition means he is called a resident. Under a basic condition, there are two criteria. That means there are two conditions. If individual satisfy any one of these conditions means he is called a resident in India. The first criterion under the basic condition is to establish the tax residency in India is straightforward. That is, an individual is considered a resident for tax purpose if he or she has been physically present in India for a period of 182 days or more during the previous year. This means if you spend more than 6 months means you spend more than 182 days. You are classified as a resident in India. Then second criteria is more complicated. That is, it involves a calculation over a multiple years. That means an individual who has been present in India for a minimum of 60 days or more during the previous year, and over the 4 years immediately preceding the financial year, their total physical presence in India is 365 days or more. This is the second criterion of basic condition. This means it is not just about the current year, but also about your recent history in India. If you have spent at least 60 days in India during the year and a cumulative total of 365 days or more in 4 years immediately preceding the previous year, you will be considered as a resident in India. That means under the basic conditions, there are two criteria. If an individual satisfies any one of these criteria means he is called a resident. Otherwise, he is a non-resident. If he satisfies any one of these conditions means he is known as a resident in India. Otherwise, he is called a non-resident in India. Then Another condition is additional condition. If a resident in India satisfy both the additional condition means he is known as a ordinarily resident. Under additional condition also there are two criteria, but a resident must satisfy both the conditions. Then only he is known as a ordinarily resident. If he fails to satisfy any one of these additional condition means he is called not ordinarily resident. That means he is only a resident, not ordinarily resident. Under an additional condition, the first criterion states that an individual resident will be considered as a ordinarily resident for tax purpose if they have spent 730 days or more in India during the 7 years immediately preceding the previous year. That means if you have been physically present in India for a total of 730 days or more over a span of 7 years immediately preceding the previous year, then only you will be qualified. Under the additional condition, the second criteria relates to the individual's residency history in India. To be considered a resident for tax purpose, a person must have resided in India at least 2 out of 10 financial years immediately preceding the previous year. This means you should have had a residential presence in India for at least 2 out of 10 preceding the year for which you are determining your tax residency. That means under additional conditions, there are also two criterion. If a resident individual satisfy these two conditions, these two criteria means the individual resident is called a ordinarily resident. Otherwise, he is called a resident but not ordinarily resident. It is important to note that these criteria are crucial for determining your tax obligations in India. Being a tax resident means your worldwide income is subject to Indian taxation. Failing to meet these criteria means you will be treated as a non-resident. Then only your income earned in India will be taxable. So understanding these criteria is very essential for anyone who is living or working in India to calculate their tax liability accurately. And also the provision allows individual to engage in effective tax planning and compliance with the tax laws of the country. I hope you are all very clear about the criteria for the residential status of an individual. Thank you.